Well, hey there, you're on the internet, I have too much free time, and welcome to the Triple N Network, where all you newbie nib nerds can find all the news you'll need. Let's look at ink now, shall we? Now, if you've seen some of my other videos, you may notice the lighting's a little different, so I hope you'll be patient with me. But today's ink is a sailor ink. It's pronounced, I have no idea, but translated it means either sky blue or blue sky. Here's the chromatography. It's a very simple blue. It's a lighter shade of blue. I guess sky blue is kind of a good identifier for it. Here's how it is written in Japanese. Maybe I can get that closer. I've been told it's something like Souten, but I'm sure I'm just butchering that. Anyways, this is the bottle. It's about 50 milliliters. It's a nice stout little bottle. There's a little contraption inside that makes it easier to fill, especially if you have a piston filler. So that's nice. Starting from the top down, here's Clairefontaine 90 grams per square meter. Used a Hero 676, both sort of standard where it's a very fine nib, and then one I sort of tweaked myself that was more wet and a bit broader. As you can see, it actually has pretty good potential for shading. It remains a fairly light blue, even if you lay it on very thick, as you might be able to see. And the water test was messy, but it was okay, which the sort of chromatography, I don't know, alluded to, that if you, like we see here in the wetter one, if you put a lot down, more will remain once you get it wet. I'm assuming you're getting it wet accidentally. And here's Rhodia, 80 grams per square meter. Also dried very fast. Sorry, here's the Clairefontaine again. It dried in 3 seconds in the thinner pen and about 5 seconds in the broader, wetter pen. Anyways, back to the Rhodia. The Rhodia was a bit odd in that it took 5 and 6 seconds to dry. So it actually took quicker to dry on the more dense paper. But again, as you know, most logic would dictate, the wetter pen took longer to dry. Now, I kind of wanted to see where I screwed up here, because you get great shading in there. Yes, sometimes I misspell things. And again, the water test sort of was the same, where the more you put down, the more remains, but again, it sort of dyed the paper nearby. Next is Tomoe River, which is a cream paper. So it kind of changed the characteristic of the ink just a little bit. It took 12 and 8 seconds to dry on here because this paper is unbelievable. But yeah, no bleed, no feather, no spread, which is what the paper's known for, even after the water test. But great shading, which is another thing the paper is well liked for. And the water test was actually really impressive because a lot of times on this paper, once you add water to dry ink, it wants to just let it slide away. But here, that's actually very readable, both in person and on camera. Next is 20-pound copy paper. It was very quick to dry here. It was 2 seconds and 5 seconds respectively for the dry pen and the wet pen. And you still got shading, and I feel like you still got character, and it was pretty well behaved. No bleed, no feather, no spread, not even on the water test. And this is just, I think this is just great white 20-pound copy paper, I'm pretty sure. And again, thicker pen, easier to read, thinner pen, not so much. Next is Mead notebook paper, which most Americans will probably be familiar with, whether they like it or not. As you can see, it's gotten kind of flat. It still has a vibrancy to it though, which I liked. That sort of made up for the fact that in the wetter pen it got kind of messy. If you'll notice, though, the thin pen did fairly well. Sorry, this new lighting may not work for me right now. But anyways, the water test was messy, but and a little scraggly, and there was some bleed through, but as you can see, it was mostly with the thicker pen. So if you do have to use this paper and you do like fountain pens, maybe try using a thinner writing pen, like a fine or an extra fine, but that may not help you too much with the water test. And lastly is Moleskine paper, which didn't do too well. There was bleed, there was feather, there was spread, and there was a lot of expansion. I mean, look at how big the broad, where it says broadened and wettened, it got really fat. And there's some feather shoot-offs where it says Souten, maybe I can catch that on camera. And it just got enormous, and it wasn't all that well behaved in the finer writing pen either. Here in Sky, you can see some feathers. And although it's cream paper, and sometimes I feel like that can bring out some of the vibrancy in blue inks, it didn't really do so here. The water test was actually somewhat, I don't know, it was a disaster, but I felt like it was almost a livable disaster, because look at how readable that is. I mean, I guess if we're trying to find the best in a bad situation, that would be very readable. And because it caused such expansion on the finer writing pen, it actually made it somewhat more readable. Sorry, I'm very critical of fine writing pens. So that is Sailor Sky Blue or Blue Sky, not to be confused with Sky High, which has been discontinued. However, though I never got to try it before it got discontinued, I do actually really like this ink. I have it in, I think, at least 2 pens now. So I give it a thumbs up. It's not the best at water resistance. It's not the most well-behaved on the cheapest of cheap papers, but if you put it in a fine nib, it'll do all right. I think it has good color. If you put it in a wet nib, it has better water resistance. And you know what? Why don't you let me know what you think? So leave me a message or give me a thumbs up and let me know, and we can talk about it. Or not. Whichever. So long from the Triple N Network. Have a good day.